Hi, I'm delighted to be here with John Rushton, the Life
Rasheed.
Doctor. John, I just wanted to, people call you Life Doctor. I think you've lived a fascinating life, originally from the north of the UK.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe that's where your tough, first of all, the straight-talking, no-nonsense style that you're known for
Yes.
First emerged. I know you've had an interesting career. I'm going to get you to tell people a lot about it. I'm fascinated in a particular point of your career where you became an international troubleshooter travelling all the world. But tell me a little bit about very briefly about your early life and your career and how life started for you and how you got into the work that you do now.
I think, I definitely got into what I'm doing now purely by accident.
Right.
And I got into the work that I did prior to doing this, again purely by accident. I went to university and I got my degree in business management, and I thought, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was boring.
Yeah.
Very boring, in fact.
Right.
And I just got a job in East Anglia, in fact, doing photography of all things, and which I really enjoyed, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do.
And it's quite a jump from the business management to photography, because business management for you must have been very boring to then go to something else. I wonder, was that part of it? Did you want something that was completely different too?
No, it was just a case of actually moving and just going somewhere. Right. It was an opportunity, and being sort of 21, and I thought, well, it's time I moved and did something and went somewhere. And when I got there, I thought, well, this is not what I want to do. And I actually replied to a very small ad, in fact, in the Daily Telegraph years ago, and it was for a multinational company, and I didn't know, I'd never even heard of the company, to be quite honest. And it was looking for a troubleshooter.
Right.
And I had no qualifications whatsoever. And I actually got the job within a week. And
when they said troubleshooter, so tell me, I'm fascinated about this because we know of Lee Harvey. What's this famous one? I've forgotten his name now. There are a number of famous kind of troubleshooters who go round and I guess to particular things and fixing things either within one organisation from organisation to organisation.
Yes.
What did your particular role involve?
It actually went round sorting aspects of the company out and various subsidiaries, associates, affiliates or whatever. And what used to happen was if a company wasn't doing as well as it should, they would send the financial people, and if there were no financial irregularities, they'd send the marketing people. And if there were no marketing irregularities, they'd send me. And I had to make a story out and say, well, I was coming over and I wanted to see them and I wanted their input as to new products, new services, new delivery.
But you were really fact-finding, is that right?
Absolutely, yes.
You were fact-finding.
Yes.
This must be an extraordinary job for somebody very, very young and so on. And how on earth did you go about that kind of job of trying to find something or trying to identify what was wrong when the finance, marketing and other experts couldn't? How did you go about that particular job and what did you discover during it?
I discovered myself, more than anything else. It's sort of a bit of a cliche thing to say, but I discovered something about myself because the first day, the MD and his wife would take you out for dinner. Yeah. The next day, you'd take a couple of the managers, or the managers and their wives out for dinner. And the third day, you'd take one or two of the lower managers and one or two of the guys from the office out. And the fourth day, you knew exactly what the company was doing, or what it shouldn't have done, or what it did do, or what it was going to do.
So were you, during this time, you weren't just taking notes, you were quizzing, you were finding out subtly, getting a picture of the organisation, the culture, the people, the issues, the challenges. I guess that's what you were doing during this time, is that right?
It was, but I think it was more than just a psychological approach. It was literally just talking and listening. And what I found subsequently, that everybody will tell you everything about themselves whether they want to or not.
Right.
You've only got to listen to someone just for a few moments and you can tell so much about them, even the things they don't want you to know.
This is very powerful.
Yes.
So tell me, what was it that you discovered about yourself, and what was it the thing that you found about the other people that you were working with that I guess led you to the work that you do now? Nowadays, that you there's a radio show you just recently published a book. I think it's the second or third book that you've kind of published. What was it you discovered about you, and then what was it you discovered about all these people that you were meeting?
I think it was sort of an intuitive ability I had, and also it was wherever you are in the world, people have the same kind of emotions. If you're happy, you laugh. If you're sad, you cry. However, how you get to those emotions depend whether you're in London, in New York, in Saudi Arabia, in Ghana, in Johannesburg, in Australia,
And was
in
your
Japan.
work taking to all these
And I was
different
going
places?
to all those places.
Right,
You know,
right.
I was sometimes going to 20 countries in 33 days.
Right. So it sounds to me, so you're saying something really powerful here and something important, John, that the emotions, people, some of the issues were very similar. The emotions again are similar, but where people got to them because I guess the cultural differences or customs or this or what was right seemed right, wrong, or what you should and shouldn't do was different. What then what happened then next for you? I guess this was giving you all sorts of information about you, them, and all the rest of it. What happened next for you? What happened then next from that? And tell me a little bit about what happened next, because I guess you're learning huge amounts about people, about business, about the human condition, about what doesn't work. Tell me a little bit about what was the upshot of all of that?
Well, if I have to be really honest, it was that I felt a bit of a loner. I felt a bit outside of my company or the companies I was working for. And to be quite honest, I was really well paid and I was well looked after. I used to travel first class and
Lots of dinners, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yes, and Concorde, and had a lovely company car, had a marvellous expense account, so I couldn't complain. But I felt that I was alien, I could do something more than just wander around the world, which I absolutely loved. I mean, some people don't like that, but I did. And actually see what makes people tick, and that was something. And I didn't want to go down the psychological route.
Right.
You know, if you do this and and all this.
So you didn't necessarily want to be a therapist or
No,
anything like
none of
no.
that whatsoever, because I thought that was really dull, that was ultra boring. I wanted to see people from a fresh approach, how people, like all the people here in Green Park, intermingle, how they get on, without sort of sitting down staring with a dull face, taking notes. I wanted to actually encompass that and embrace it, and actually be able to put it into real use, which is what I'm doing.
Which you're doing now. And I would imagine it must have been a big jump to go from that, I guess, a great, fantastic job, a dream job, especially for somebody very young, to going into something that's unknown, isn't it?
Yes.
Where even though some of the titles that you've gone by, Life Doctor, this, that, and the other, you know, they're not as fixed. You know, you broadcast and all this kind of stuff. So, how did you then find your way to what it is that you do today? I can tell that there's a huge crossover with the work that you've done.
Yes.
You work with individuals, you work with companies, you work with all sorts of people. But how did you then find your way once you'd left that comfort of that particular place? How did you then find your way?
I think, to be quite honest, again, with great difficulty.
Yeah.
Because how do you reinvent yourself? And when you've found or reinvented yourself, how do you put it out in a soluble way for people to understand?
Right. Yes.
How do you put it in a way that people don't think it sounds good, but I'm not quite sure, it's not me. And sometimes you've really got to go lower to bring people up and get in. So it was really a very weird course, and it was only really a case of getting in touch with a number of people and the word of mouth, that they actually by default gave you a level which you could hook yourself on.
And that's fascinating. What you're saying I just think it's absolutely fascinating, because I guess that there's a whole continuum of all sorts of people. You know, you've got doctors over here. I'm not saying that's completely different over there, but you've got people like me who might call themselves, you might have coaches, you might have consultants over here, you've got troubleshooters like what you've done, you might have therapists over there. But I get the feeling that you've not wanted any of those particular things, because you want to work in a different way. And I get the feeling that you just want people to look afresh at life, which is one of the things I'm very passionate about.
Yes,
I think people just look afresh at their lives. Tell me then a little bit about what life's like now. What are the kind of things that you're doing now, and what's the kind of work you do? I know that you've just published your this book, which I think your second or the third book. I know there's a radio show that you do. Perhaps you'll tell us a little bit about that. But how is it that people find you now? Tell us a little bit about the nature of the work that you do, if you'd even call it work now.
Yes. It's very different now. I do quite a bit of work for multinational companies, actually looking at products or services from an emotional aspect. And how that can actually interlink with the client, because obviously they've gone through a lot of time and trouble getting the product or the service done, and they've gone through teething problems. I'm doing now with two companies, one a major bank and one a major airline, and it's actually looking at the emotional aspects. I've already picked up a lot of faults which they haven't seen, because in theory you can do something, in practice, when people come to do it, it doesn't always work.
It's really important. It's fascinating what you're saying, because one thing I think sounds lovely already, what you've talked, it seems that it brings all these different themes together. That rich experience you had as the troubleshooter, the work that you do working with people one-to-one, and then bring it back to companies, that interface between a company, the product and the human experience. So that must be really, really interesting, isn't it?
It is. I'm also actually, and you've heard it here first, doing a series of cartoons later in the year on emotional subjects, which will actually bring the topic of the subject to a level that everybody can understand without it being wet and ineffectual and shallow, and without it being full of psychological goopy goop. It's really sort of in your face, as I am, and no messing, but it's not rude and it's not offensive. I mean, I don't care if people get offended. I mean, I'm not interested in political correctness at all. You can die waiting. But it's something which actually gets to, like the Heineken effect, it can reach other parts which other people can't.
So you're really helping people to kind of understand all that emotional stuff that's playing out on them, and perhaps to get them to look and to understand their emotions more simply. Is that?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And tell us a little bit about the radio. Tell us a little bit about the radio that you do.
Well, Life Radio International is a 24/7 radio channel. It's actually broadcasting at this moment to 152 countries.
So if people were trying to find that in your channel, how would they find that?
It's on iTunes.
Or they just type in Life
Radio International. It's on Google Play, and it's also on the website, which is liferadiointernational.com, and they can get it. And that's currently broadcasting to over 900,000 people.
Wow, that's fun. I mean, that's amazing. It's the power stuff. Now, what is it that keeps you enthused and excited? What is all this work about for you now? Because it sounds as though it's been quite a journey, actually, from 18, working with all sorts of people, companies, individuals, and so on, and finding your own path in your own way, meeting people all over the globe. What is it that continues to enthuse you, and what is that? Would you say that your work is about now? I know you've given us quite an insight into that, but I'm just curious to know, what is it that continues to excite and enthuse you, and what are your hopes moving forward?
I think it's just the excitement of dealing with people.
Yes.
And also the reciprocation, because when you actually go to a group of people and you suddenly pick up on something, it could be the simplest of things, but it takes only a small pin to burst a big balloon. You know, you don't need much, and all the eyes light up. And
I see.
Oh yes.
So it sounds as though there's a lot of the work is again about insight, isn't it? It's interesting.
Yes, it is.
People talk about customer insight, consumer insight, but I guess that's whether it's an individual, whether it's a company, whether it's about product. You're actually helping them get perhaps a better, clearer insight, and therefore, I know we were talking when we were chatting before about people's emotional intelligence and so on. Perhaps a bit more wherewithal to be able to deal with once they've got insight. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and I think it's also, from my point of view, a more moral aspect. It's not just shoving a product onto somebody because you can get more people to buy it, because that only has a finite life.
Right. Are you saying that because your focus is very often on the people and the emotional stuff, you're not at that point tied into necessarily the product per se or anything else? You're able to really look at the individuals, the emotion, the emotional impact, so that people can move forward in a way that's not tied at that point, at least, to the outcomes. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I'm not looking from a cold clinical point of view, from an accountancy point of view or a financial point of view. I know that has to exist, so I'm never going to negate all that. But there's a big difference between actually just doing it for the sake of doing it, because it's cold and clinical, and actually making the product slightly better, that it actually gives people a better feel and a presence and value to them, because they can do something with it. And a lot of companies actually have actually changed the product, or even the way it's actually implemented, the service, because of that.
Wow, and it sounds exciting, John. It sounds like it's interesting. I know your book's called Crossover, but it sounds like this is an exciting point for you in your career, because there's this lovely blend then between the work with the individuals and things like Life Radio, where you're engaging with people all around the world, and then this work with companies. So it's lovely how it seems like the arc of your career has given you the best of all these different worlds, isn't it?
It has, yes.
You know, from working in a very focused company to being able to engage with all sorts of different companies, all sorts of people around the world. But it sounds fascinating. For anyone who's trying to reach you or just to find more, or they're curious, you've talked about Life Radio and how people can find that. But if people are looking to find you, how would they find you?
On my website, all the details are there, and all my subsidiaries and associates and bits and pieces.
Oh, and what's that website address?
That's www.thelifedoctor.info.
Oh wow, wonderful. It's been a pleasure pleasure speaking to you.
And
Wishing you all
too,
the best,
Rasheed.
and I'm going to leave you
Thank
to
you.
smile at the camera as we
Yes.
switch off. Thanks so much, and all the
Okay,
best.
thank you.